Buddy, so today we're going to look at how we can use the layers panel to correct our images, and this is something that will be expanded on from your knowledge of using the layers panel in the previous project. So if we look at the layers panel over here, one way that we want to work with this panel is non-destructively. So what we'll be able to do is, if we make a adjustment on this layer, it'll be applied to this background layer. But in order to be flexible with our workflow, we're going to make a copy of this background layer and apply all of our corrections onto that layer. So let's do that really quickly, and then we can address some of the issues in this photograph. I'm just going to pull and drag the background layer to the new layer icon, and then it'll create a new background copy. I'm going to rename this corrections here, and then just hit enter. You just double click on that text and it'll become an editable text box. So now I have a new layer with corrections and I'm selecting that layer. If I go up to my application bar and select image, adjustments, brightness and contrast, then I'll be able to adjust this image based on brightness and contrast. The interesting thing about this is that anything that I do will be applied to this layer here. So I can see that this image is a little lackluster, so I'd like to brighten that up. And usually when you add brightness to an image, a lot of the color contrast leaves. So then in this case, I'm correcting the exposure in general, and as a result, I'll have to adjust the contrast just to fill in some of those shadowed areas that might be getting lost in brighter tones. I'm also going to look at my histogram and see what's going on with my histogram. That is a tonal representation of the photograph, so you can see that there is a lot of bright values that are in this image because the histogram has a peak in the highlights. So here I'm just adjusting that and then adding a little bit of contrast to punch this image up a little bit. So if we go and press OK here, that'll apply that correction to this photograph. And when we look at this, we can say there's the before and then there's the after. And we're just turning on and off the visibility. But the really important thing to take away from this is that we didn't affect our background layer at all. We've only affected this corrections layer. The really interesting part is that you can change your mind, and if we find that we've brightened this image too much, we can go to our opacity slider here in our layers panel and say, oh, maybe I just want this effect at 70% strength. And here it's all the way at 0, and then I can bump it up until it looks about right. And here I'm thinking about 80% looks better than the full 100, and I can be flexible with how I apply these corrections and intuitively problem solve these issues with exposure.